Thanks for tuning in. I'm Ben Aston, and this is the Digital Project Manager Podcast. Today, I am joined by my new best friend, Robyn Reynolds. And today, we're going to be talking about our awesome new DPM project, Dear DPM.
Hi, guys. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks, Ben, for having me. I love you, new best friend.
Our friendship is growing, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But Robyn, let's first just talk about you. So for those, you've actually not written an article on the Digital Project Manager before. We're about to launch your first post. But you've been working on this new project, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But tell us a little bit about yourself. You are in the Pacific Northwest, are you not?
I am. I live in Portland, Oregon. But to be more exact, I live just outside of the city near the Mount Hood National Forest. So basically, I live in like a Pacific Northwest cliche environment. So right outside my window are these like giant cedars, and there's a raging glacial stream, and it's quite fun. I quite like it.
That's is it raining right now?
It is sunny, blue skies.
Crazy it is for me as well.
Yeah.
But normally it is raining, to be honest.
I don't know what to do with the sun right now. It's weird.
I went out in the sun earlier today, and I actually felt warm, which is a refreshing change for this time of year. But tell us a bit about, so it sounds like you're in the middle of nowhere, being a remote project manager.
I am. Yep, absolutely. So right now I am a senior project manager at a company called Dream 10. We are a small design studio, and we focus on a lot of product design and UX. So super fun.
Cool. And how did you start working with them? Like I'm always interested, especially with like remote PMs, how they actually get the job when they're remote. How does that work?
Well, let's start at the beginning. So, right, you get out of college, and I kind of by the end of college know I wanted to go into advertising. And unfortunately, my husband, which was my boyfriend at the time, got a great job in Alaska, where I'm from. And very nice. So we had to move back up there, and it was challenging to move back to my hometown, but I started working in a traditional agency. And at the time, we were working with a vendor called 144 and on a website project. And the girl was named Amanda, and she was a producer, and I wanted to do what she was doing. You wanted to be her. I was infatuated. And so basically, I hightailed it back out of Alaska down to Portland, where I had gone to school and worked at a couple different shops there. I actually, though, for my current position, have to credit digitalprojectmanager.com for getting me my job, because this is actually where I saw the job posting. And I was like, yes, queen, I'm applying for this. Sounds great. And here we are today.
Whoa. Do you know, that is the first success story I've heard with the job section.
Yeah. And I really think that the future of a lot of our work is moving towards remote. And for me, I wanted a challenge of how to craft remote teams and build strength and kind of figure out how to run an organization better remotely.
So how big is Dream 10 then?
We're still pretty small. We're about 4 people, and then we'll expand depending on project needs. So what's fun is that I work with a lot of international freelancers as well. So I could be on super early in the morning or checking in late at night, depending on different time zones.
And so in terms of the clients that you've got, though, who is someone in an office somewhere pretending that they're running a big agency? How does that work?
Well, we're very open that we're remote. And what's different is that I no longer travel for work. When I was at Struck previously, I was always traveling to Salt Lake or LA, visiting with clients. But now we do a lot of meetings over web conference, which is Zoom Room. And I found that we're really quick at turning around project timelines, and we're really great at presenting and encouraging our clients to participate through Zoom Room, which I'm obsessed with. So
cool. So the way that you typically interact with your clients is everyone's remote. So
Yep.
no one's going to like in-person client meetings.
No, not yet. And we really own that. And I think it hasn't been a challenge. You know, when you have your webcam on, you're pretty vulnerable and visible to everybody. So, and even on that note, I mean, I'm showing my house, right? Like you can see what's behind me. You can see sometimes my kid. And so I think it's just super personable still.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And so what keeps you busy outside of work? There's one thing that I do want to ask you about outside of work. I was stalking you on LinkedIn earlier.
Oh, good.
And I saw you the publicity director for Sons of Norway, Anchorage.
Oh, I need to change that. No, so my dad's from Norway, and I come from a pretty heavy Norwegian background in terms of cultural traditions. And my dad was running a lodge up there of Norwegians, right? They get together and they do language classes and they eat Norwegian food. And that helped me to strengthen my skills in terms of email and website deployments and all sorts of stuff. So no longer.
Oh, well, you need to update your LinkedIn.
I do. I was caught.
Caught out. Apparently on LinkedIn, you've been doing it for like, I don't know, 10 years.
I'm very experienced, yes.
I was impressed. I was very impressed. So, okay, so if you're not doing Sons of Norway anymore in Anchorage, I thought it was interesting. It was a Norwegian society in Alaska, but you're doing it from Portland, and I thought that is fascinating.
No, I'm sorry to disappoint.
So what else are you doing then?
Well, I recently turned 30, and so I don't know why, but I kind of try to make myself uncomfortable a lot more in my free time, which is odd, like doing this podcast, for example. But also I put up a glamping tent at my house and hosted on Airbnb this past summer, and that was really fun.
Nice.
But when I'm not doing weird, uncomfortable things like that, I drink a lot of craft brews here in the Pacific Northwest. I like to visit with friends, and, you know, obviously I binge Netflix like all of us. So,
well, especially with you being what sounds like in the middle of nowhere, next to your next to your trees and stream.
No.
So, but what? So apart from you pitched a tent in your back garden, you sold the world, or sold the Airbnb world on your glamping idea. But what other things have you done to make yourself uncomfortable? If this is your thing, make yourself uncomfortable. What else are you doing to be uncomfortable?
So another thing I did to make myself uncomfortable and challenge myself is that I climbed the tallest mountain in Oregon, Mount Hood. It's about a 30 minutes drive from my house. And so I was staring at it after I was commuting back from Portland every day for about 2 years. And I was like, all right, fine, I'm coming after you. And so I figured out how to get a lot of training hikes in, and me and my friend Linda did it. And it was probably one of the hardest, but also most exciting things I've done.
That is cool. That's I was just Googling it, hence my kind of just ignoring you for a minute. 3,500 meters, just about. Last erupted in 1907, for those who are interested.
It is still active. So
was it smoky?
No, I mean, you can smell sulfur around.
Yeah.
And what's really scary is we did it pretty early in the season. And so there was a lot of snowfall, and somebody actually ended up dying that day up there, which is very, very sad. So be safe while climbing, everybody.
Be safe. It's one of those proper mountains that's got snow on it. So that's a big deal, people. Cool. So let's talk about Dear DPM. And 3 months ago, and it was a long time ago, sadly, although Robyn and I are both project managers, we wanted to do this properly. So a lot of planning has gone into this. And Robyn messaged me totally out of the blue and said, I think we should do an anonymous advice column for digital project managers. And so 3 months later, here it is. But Robyn, this is all your idea. I'm kind of jumping on your bandwagon. So for those who haven't checked it out yet, what is Dear DPM all about?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you, Ben, for being even open to this idea. I know I just kind of randomly pinged you, so I appreciate that. But you see, I love so many different advice columns and podcasts that are out there, from Savage Love to Dear Sugar to plain old Dear Abby. There's, I think, something really special and lovely about learning and empathizing with other people's issues and then relating back to them. So for me, I know there's been a lot of times when I've referenced back to those columns or thought back and when I was faced with a similar situation, and it's made me all the wiser. So in our industry, though, as DPMs, we're in an incredibly challenging role, and we're constantly dealing with other people's problems and not necessarily focusing attention on our own, right? So we're adapting and facilitating and sending and editing and scoping, but sometimes we're faced with challenges where we just, I think, need to be open with others in our community and consult without showing that weakness or fear to an internal team or a client. So I just really wanted to create a community where we could provide some third-party advice and see if we can help somebody else out and get a fresh perspective.
Yeah, awesome. And so, we posted up some kind of sample questions that people might want to ask us. And just to help explain the concept, we have a new page on the digitalprojectmanager.com. If you head to the community section, you'll find Dear DPM, and you can find this new page that we've created there. And on the page, there is a form. And all you need to do to submit a question, and the idea is that you can submit it anonymously. So whereas in other kind of forums and settings, there would be a record of you asking this question for all eternity. The beauty of this is that you're asking it anonymously, and Robyn and I receive your question, and then we'll answer your Dear DPM questions. And we kind of posted a few questions up there already. We'll talk about those in a second. But we gave some sample questions as well. So, for example, have you started a new job and realized you've made a huge mistake? Do you work with a creative diva that drives you up the wall? Or do you get panic attacks from the constant ping of Slack notifications? These were all kind of Robyn's ideas as sample questions. So I have to ask Robyn, are these all things that you've had yourself? Are these personal issues that you've encountered? Well,
I mean, they're kind of pretty universal DPM issues, right? I mean, can't you think back to a time when you're like, oh yeah, I guess that happened to me. The severity though is controversial. So.
Yeah. So I mean, it's tricky to talk about, isn't it? But let's do this. So, going to that, starting a new job and realizing you've made a huge mistake. I feel like, I have to be honest, almost every time I've started a new job, I felt that way. And you start out in a new place, and all of a sudden, all the things that you realize you were confident in previously at your old job, you suddenly kind of run into new systems and new processes and new people, and you're like, I hate this. This is awful.
Totally.
And I don't know if you've had a similar experience.
Totally. And I'm over here nodding my head, because it's like, if you're not experiencing that at a new job, I feel like almost you haven't started it, maybe. I don't know. Like, I feel like that's a totally human moment to go through.
Yeah, I think I remember one agency that I started out at, and I feel like the worst kind of jobs where you feel like you've made a huge mistake. So this was my first job when I transitioned. Wasn't my first job. I guess this was my third job or something. Anyway, so I transitioned from account management to a new role, and I was told, I went through the interview process. I was perfectly honest about what I did. At the time, I was an account manager. I'd been an account exec. I'd moved up to an account manager, and I was at like a traditional ad agency. And so I interviewed at an agency called Dare, and what happened was that I was told, hey, yeah, the role is for something called a producer. It's pretty much the same as you've been doing already. Don't worry about that. I was like, cool, that sounds interesting. So my job title changed from account manager to producer, and it was my first day on the job, and I was handed a project and told, okay, so we need an estimate for this, a project plan, a statement of work. And I was like, oh, so what? Is there a PM I'm supposed to work with on this?
Oh.
And they were like, no, you're doing it. And I'm like, okay. And then it was at that point that I realized I'd never actually created a project plan before. I'd never done an estimate. I'd never done a statement of work. I'd always worked with a PM, and they'd done it. They'd done it for me. I was just the one that sold it to the client. And so that day was one of those moments where I was like, oh my gosh, this was a really bad idea. I have no idea what I'm doing. But
Oh my gosh.
that was baptism by fire. Thankfully, in that situation, there were some great people at the agency. I was at Dare. Some people who were really, really helpful. They were really supportive, and I didn't fully reveal how little I knew, but I did have to kind of sneakily watch YouTube videos on how to use Microsoft Project to create these project plans. And by the end of the day, I was like, hey, I've got this. So hey, these things, particularly like the things that we have to create, they're not really that tricky. So I was away within a few days, but that was certainly one of my moments where I was like, this is such a bad idea. What am I doing here?
Oh my gosh. I totally agree with, like, sometimes you just have to fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
And if you have to remain humble, obviously, in that situation, but you have to be like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out, because I think at the root of all of us as digital project managers, we have this core set of we're always trying to solve these problems, right? And skills can be taught, since you are now a master of Microsoft Project.
There we go. Yeah, and I think it's so true there. Like, we are, I think the fun thing about digital project management is that we, it's always evolving. There's always something new. Like, the kind of projects that we work on are constantly evolving. So we're not working on the same things that we were working on 5 years ago. Whereas I used to do like stacks of banner campaigns, and flash campaign microsites that the client would spend like £500,000 on for a month-long campaign. We don't do that kind of thing anymore. But we have much different challenges from like working with Action Script and working with Flash, and like what I see coming in terms of working with virtual reality, and like how do you create a user experience in a virtual reality scenario. Those are the kind of things that I think, oh, hold on, you have to figure out a way of doing it. And there's a sense in which you are like faking it till you make it, because like there's always a first time that you have to do it, and you have to kind of establish the process and then refine it. But someone has to kind of show some leadership and work out a plan and see if that plan can be executed. Otherwise, you just have a whole load of people who've got no idea what they're doing. Absolutely.
And sometimes I like to use the term scrappy, right? Like, which has a negative connotation, but it's like, in that circumstance, maybe nobody knows how to get to that endpoint, right? So we just have to keep trying and adjust a couple of things to get there.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us about your creative diva who drove you up the wall.
Oh, I've had a few, which I bet you have too.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But there's a few really standout people that I don't know. Lots of storming out of meetings. Had to come up with very, very unique ways to get a hold of people at times.
Tell us the story about how you've what you've had to do to get a hold of a creative director who's hiding at the pub.
Oh my gosh, that's actually happened. Well, luckily the pub was in my building, So
Oh, nice.
I would be like, oh, where's so-and-so for this meeting? And I would have to go down and peel them out. And sometimes I would like tell on them, which is kind of facetious, but I don't know. One time I held a retrospective as a drinking game, and that got
Ooh.
everybody present for my meeting. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah, speak their language.
Yeah, and now what's beautiful about remote work, though, is I don't have to buy people lunch anymore. I don't have to do their expense reports or, that sort of thing. So I feel quite free.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. But so then, tell me about how kind of your experiences of becoming a DPM, and you're obviously like a senior PM now. What's your journey been like in terms of like the support that you've had, and how you've coped as you've progressed through your career?
Yeah, so I feel incredibly lucky. I have a very strong group of friends that are project managers, producers, account managers, kind of all within that swath. Some have been my junior producers and have grown up through the ranks. Others have always been my boss, and I love them so dearly. So that's always how I've coped, is really relying upon those relationships to gain perspective and hear about their experiences. But on that note, I still think that getting a totally unbiased perspective is super important. Sometimes I think through things by talking to other people about them. So I want to provide all of you guys a way to do that. So that maybe you don't turn to crying in the bathroom. Maybe I can just make you feel like you have a lending ear, or give you a little digital pat on the back. I'll help you right that ship if you don't have somebody to go to, or if you don't like the answer they gave you. So, Ben, how do you cope? What do you do?
Generally cry in the bathroom.
Yeah.
No, I think talking to people is always really helpful. And I think, I've been lucky too, throughout my career, either it being the kind of account person, that I was working alongside. It was kind of often the case. I'd be working with an account director, and I get on pretty well usually with those people, or just other people on my team. But I think, I do remember some scenarios though in some agencies I've been in when I'm like, hold on, I've got no one to talk to right now. This is really tricky. And then it becomes really stressful, right? When you're trying to just deal with the situation by yourself, and you don't want to necessarily have to escalate it. Because like you say, as soon as you do escalate things, sometimes it makes things more serious than they need to be. And sometimes you just need some reassurance that, hey, just keep on going. You're on the right track. Without escalating it to the CEO and then all kinds of terrible things.
And there's also been times when my mentor or my boss at the time was like, you're kind of overreacting. And that's been really appreciated too, right? To be like, you're freaking out about a dumb thing. So,
yeah. And I think, I think it's interesting, with the shift to more people working remotely, whether or not everyone's remote or just some people are remote. I think it can be really easy to overreact to, because a lot of the communication we're doing is written communication, and we're not just walking across the office anymore. There's so much more potential to misinterpret people and to accidentally overreact to stuff.
Totally. And Slack is a gold mine for problems, right? And I've learned some emojis are not, or naughty, don't use some. But,
wait, hold on. I should probably know this. Which ones shouldn't I be using?
The twins one, the girls that are twins and dancing.
Okay, I don't know that one.
Okay, do they not have that in Canada? I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
I'll send it to you afterwards.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. That's okay. That's one not to use.
Cool. So yeah, that's always fun to navigate that.
And are there any, just kind of moving away from the kind of like the peer group that you were talking about, like with your mentors and other people on your team. I know that you're also involved, are you not, with the Portland DPM Meetup?
Whoop, yeah, definitely. Sorry, my mute button was on there. But I'm casually involved with them. I don't run it. I'm a avid attendee, but I was just actually on the panel last Tuesday, and that was a really fun experience for me. I got to talk about, Ask a PM with everybody, and I was one of the 4 represented individuals, and that was exciting. And I love our PM community here in Portland because we're not account executives, right? We're all a little bit of extroverted introverts. And so we'll like get together, we'll talk, and then like everybody leaves. And the events are really well organized. There's drinks, there's food, and there's no recruiters. It's just a beautiful place. So
you know what, that it is funny. It's funny that that's how you describe the meetup, because I've been to the Vancouver PM Meetup, and you know it's funny. Like everyone's quite happy to go along to the meeting, but I feel like hardly anyone goes to like the after drinks. Everyone's kind of like, no, I've got other plans. So totally, it's fun. I wonder if that's a universal thing. That's interesting.
Yeah, and nobody ever gets wild or crazy. Everybody is in control. So
do you know that? Yeah, that is also very true. Interesting. I love your meta-analysis of the PM meetup. So what was it? You were on a panel. What was the panel being asked about then?
It was called Ask a PM. So there was 4 of us. I kind of represented the remote job, right? I'm cool. And then there was a freelancer. There's somebody that moved into client services and another individual that was a strategist. So we kind of had several different prompts and then some breakout sessions to support that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So, and by the way, if you're hearing about meetups for the first time, again, go to the community section of the digitalprojectmanager.com and you'll see we've got a post there all about all the meetups, all the digital project manager meetups that we found. If you've got a meetup and you're not featured on there, let me know and I'll add you to it. But they can be a really helpful source of advice and information and staying up to date with what's going on. And that kind of leads me to my next question for you. You're talking about this conferencing tool that you love. What else have you got in your remote PM toolkit? What do you use to manage your people and your projects?
Totally. So my toolkit has shifted as, I've moved from primarily in an office environment to being 100% remote. So for me, Slack is really heavily used, right? Got to choose the right emojis, got to have the right channels, got to have the right conversations going on and integrations there. So in addition to this, I always rely personally on my own written list. I've learned over the years that I work best with my priority list written down. Anywhere else, I'm going to miss it. And this
is your priority list is on paper?
Yeah. Like I have notebooks and then I'm kind of weird in that like I will save my notebooks until I'm done with my job.
Ooh.
Isn't that OCD? Yeah. And then I throw them all away, but it's quite fun. It's like a diary of boring entries.
I know. I did used to use notebooks. And then I did love the aspect that you could go back and like at the top of each page, you'd have like a date and you'd be like, right. I know exactly what I did on 9th of September, 2015, because it's on this page. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Totally. But we're DPM, so we're always looking at other tools. And I think that's where it's fun. I always like to try out different things, but what sticks is far and few in between for me. So
Slack.
Slack sticks.
Yeah.
And everything goes into Slack pretty much, right? So.
But what are you using to like manage your timelines and your like projects more broadly?
Yeah. So right now, at Dream 10, we're using Flow, which is a pretty simple version of like Trello, right? Or a Kanban board. And that's been very fun. I can assign my tasks. I can have different channels and timelines within that.
Cool. I've not heard of Flow.
Yeah, I hadn't either, but now I'm like an evangelist of Flow. It's great. Simple
cool.
is better sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I think it also depends on the project, right? I think sometimes when we try and use the same tools for like a big project that's like a big technical web build, and then you've got a strategy like UXy project, like trying to use Jira for both just doesn't make sense.
Totally.
So yeah, I think we can sometimes like try and tie ourselves down to like, okay, here's our process and here's our tools. And then we have a project or a client that just doesn't fit within it. And then we're like, oh yeah, that doesn't work. So I think being more flexible about it, but then integrating with different things. So like having a timesheet system that can integrate with Jira and that can integrate with Asana or Flow or whatever it is, I think makes a lot of sense.
You know what's funny is that years ago I went to, I think, the inaugural Portland DPM Meetup, and it was at Instrument, which is a really great shop here. And they were talking about how they don't have a set process. And I had a total epiphany where just because you work at this one location and you do things that way, that doesn't mean that every project needs to be that way. You can adapt your tool set. You can adapt your approach depending on the project and your team, and that's okay. And I've really embraced that ever since.
Yeah, totally. I think, particularly if you're working at an agency where you're doing different stuff. Like I think some agencies, when they're kind of rolling out the same kind of projects each month, you're always like working on a website redesign project, and that's kind of all you do. Like it makes sense to standardize. But if you're doing slightly different things and you're never quite sure what's going to come in the door, I think it's always good to stay flexible.
Absolutely.
So we're kind of beginning to run out of time, but to plug again the Dear DPM, head over to the community section of the site, and you'll find a link there. We've already covered some topics. Should I stay or should I go now? All about staying in your job or quitting it. The little bit lost lady boss, brilliant title, and I forgot. I've got to be honest. What was that one about?
That's about a woman that is considering, like, should she leave her job or should she stay there and kind of support financially her family? So,
okay,
pretty heavy.
That is pretty heavy. And then on a much more practical and much lighter note, I just published one today all about timesheets, which is and I think this is actually a really common problem. It's my team aren't filling in their timesheets. What should I do about it? So check out the answers to those questions and fill out your own. We'd love to have your questions. And we'll be probably doing a few more of these podcasts as we'll be recovering off some more of the questions that come in. But also, if you'd like to contribute to the conversation and you're not part of our Slack team, again, go to the community section of the digitalprojectmanager.com. You'll find a link there to join us on our Slack team. But until next time, thanks for listening.